Hey, family, what's going on? This is your brother, your favorite therapist, coach, James Perkins. Good to see you guys tonight. Glad to be back for Family Ish Part 2. And man, we're going to be talking about. Hey, family, what's going on? Wait a minute. See? Trying to make sure my other device was working. We're going to be in part 2 of our series, Family Ish. And tonight we're going to be talking about how our family of origin shapes the work that we're called to do. So I'm really excited to get into this. As a reminder, man, if you didn't catch first installment of this series on last week, you should go back and check it on our YouTube page or Facebook. I talked about how our family of origin shapes our identity, how our family of origin shapes our identity. It was incredible. You should go back and listen to it. Tonight, we're going to be talking about how our family of origin shapes the work that we're called to do. And I'm excited. As you're coming on in, though, let me know where you're chiming in from, city and state. Would love to greet you, connect with you. I'm again glad that you're here tonight. My name again is James Perkins. I'm a therapist and a coach here in North Carolina, where I practice individual and couples therapy, do some coaching, work with a lot of brothers who look like me and share my experience. And I'm very grateful to be holding space for those individuals. All right, I'm going to check some things on my end just to make sure we are all set for tonight and that we are good to go. And then we'll be on and rocking. So again, man, let me know if you're coming in on either by live or replay. Let me know where you're chiming in from. Perfect. Got some thumbs up there that we're good to go. And let's get this show on and popping, man. So I've really been ready to get into this series tonight. And excuse me, guys, I'm just making sure I got everything in its rightful place. Been really looking forward to getting into the series tonight, or second part of this series, because I really believe that our family of origin is really linked to how we, it's really linked to the work that we're called to do. And I am trying to find my comments here, you guys, so that I can see you guys when you're chiming in. And I want to see that. Where did that go? See, I have all this stuff up and running right before I start, and then it disappears on me. All right, guys, give me one moment. Okay, perfect. All right. Well, I'm not going to let that bother me. If you guys coming on in, again, let me know where you're chiming in from, city, state. There we go. I got it. There we go. I got it. All right. So how our family of origin shapes what we're called to do. So last week, I ended out introducing a specific passage of scripture in Jeremiah 1:4, where, and you may not be religious, I am, hope that doesn't bother you, but I think you'll find value in what I have to say. For those of us who are believers, there's this passage of scripture in Jeremiah 1:4, where God is talking to Jeremiah, and he says, before I formed you, I knew you. Before I formed you, I knew you. And so before God even put put Jeremiah in his mother's womb, he already knew Jeremiah. So what does it mean that he knew Jeremiah? What that means is that he already had a preset purpose, plan for his life. He knew Jeremiah all all of his tendencies, proclivities, who he was, and his identity. He knew all of that. All of that was prepackaged in who Jeremiah was before he came into existence. And that's important to think about, and to stop and to reflect on, that all of that was established before he was even a thought in his mother's mind, or even conceived by his mother and the man that had procreated him. God had already knew him. And so you have to stop and think about the implications of that, right? Is that if God knew Jeremiah before he was in his mother's womb, and he gave him a purpose and a plan, which we know according to Jeremiah 29:11, that he says that I know the plans that I have for you, plans to give you a future and a hope, to give you an expected end. And if God's plans for him are intentional to give him an expected end, God had to consider that, man, everybody obviously has their own independent will. And if he thought that by placing you in a specific family circumstance, that specific family circumstance would hinder your ability to fulfill what he'd already called you to do, he wouldn't have placed you in that family. I want you to think about that. That if God is all powerful, all knowing, all seeing, if he created you for a purpose and a plan, and he knew that the family that you that he was going to place you in, the family that was going to give birth to you, they were going to have their own free will, their own volition, and that by interacting with you, they were going to sabotage the plans and purposes that God has for you. He wouldn't have placed you in that family. So this is the first point I want to make, is that God allows and is very intentional, even with the family that he allows us to be birthed in. Now, I know for some of you may be saying outright, like, man, I didn't have the best of families. I didn't have the best of families, or best of family. If you knew my experience, you probably wouldn't be saying that. And you probably have, I see your point there. Like, if you were raised in a family that neglected you, did not show up for you, you were raised by people that just were not there for you, how can I sit here as a therapist who loves people, who holds space for people, and say that this is a family that God wanted me to board into? Well, I want to have you to consider that all of our families have been uniquely designed and shaped for who we are, and that the family that we are born into, that we are allowed to experience and live in, will only help to fulfill what God has called us to do. The family that we are born into, when we take the perspective, when we allow the experiences that we've had to shape and form us and serve us, then we can fulfill what God has called us to do. That the traumas, the ways in which our families have dropped us, has set us up for success, the wounds, all of those things, none of that is ever wasted. So I want you to realize that, man, all of your experiences that you have had as a result of your experience in your own family of origin have set you up for what God has called you to do. Man, that's really good news right there. Like, give me some hearts on that one, because I know that's good news. If you guys are feeling me on that, drop some emojis or something, thumbs up, let me know that you hear your brother speaking tonight. Okay? Perfect. So none of that ever surprises God. Like, what you have experienced did not catch God off surprise. Like, what you went through in your childhood and your family of origin, none of that ever caught him off guard, because he knew that he was going to use it to help you get to where you need to go. So I want to talk about these 4 ways that I believe our family of origin shapes the work that we're called to, and going to give them to you and I'll work through them. Each of them, there are 4 P's, and I'm going to just give them to you, and then I'll work through them. First is problem. Second is place. Second is population. Second is process. So, problem, place, population, process. And they're in no specific order, but I'm going to give them to you. So, one of the unique things about our families of origin that we experience, that we grew up in, is because of the experiences that we have had in our own families of origin, we carry a unique burden and sensitivity for certain um, for certain things as a result of our experience in our own family of origin. So, for instance, if you grew up in a home where um, emotional connection was not very high, that may give you a extra sensitivity towards being in relationships where that is a priority for you. And it's going to also inform the work that you probably do, because you don't want people to experience some of the same things that you've experienced in your own family of origin. Um, and so our unique wounds, our wounds, the things that we have, ways in which we've been wounded and dropped, are a insight, are a something we should pay attention to, because they are an indication as to what we may be called to do in the future as it relates to our life purpose. Um, and so I grew up in a family whom I love very dearly, have 3 other siblings, have wonderful parents, and have a wonderful dad, is a hero of sorts. I am a junior. I have great respect for my dad, love him dearly. Um, Man, there's so many memories I probably could go through and share with you about, the impact my dad has had on me. One of the things that I often say when we're celebrating him during his birthday um, yearly is that I'm very proud that I have been given a great name. That because my name is James Perkins, I do not have to hang my head because of the way that my father lived. I don't have to hang my head. And that is something I'm very proud of, that he's already left me a legacy of a good name. And that's very important to me. And so I'm very grateful for that. And at the same time, one of the things that I struggled with in our relationship is emotional connection. So, my like a lot of dads, or dads, if you will, from the experience of baby boom generation, their models of fatherhood they got from their fathers, right? And this is, I talk about this in my experience with clients, that we look back, or actually talked about this on last week, that we look back to go forward. We don't look back to cast blame. We look back for clarity and understanding. And so, I realized that, my dad was a product of his experience growing up as the son of a sharecropper. And in that generation, emotional connection wasn't something that was a really high priority in family units. As long as, especially for a lot of fathers, as long as the father was providing financially for the household, that was pretty much what was expected. And that's really all they had time for, was to provide, because of the schedules and things of that nature. Much of that sometimes was left to the mother for the nurturing and things of that nature. So as a result of that, my father he was very present, still is very present in my life today, but in some ways mostly disconnected. Not as a result of, and I want you to be clear here, it's not that he doesn't care, right? but he never had that capacity for emotional connection to be cultivated, or that vulnerability to be cultivated. And so that limited, in some ways, our development of our relationship. So what that produced in me was a desire to want to help people cultivate thriving emotional connections in their with people that they love in their own families. So it's no coincidence that I end up in part becoming a therapist, because I wanted to create and cultivate spaces where people could feel seen, feel heard, be validated, be understood. And also because I know that my dad is a byproduct of his own story and his own experience. That our parents are literally giving us the best of who they are for where they're at in their own development of their journey. Does this um, uh, let our parents off the hook? No, it's just a reality that our parents are oftentimes giving the best of who they are for the person that they are in that moment. And that they are the byproduct of their own story, their own experience with their own caregivers. So if you are going to blame your parent for some of the things that you've been negatively impacted by, you also have to give them credit for the things that they did good that you now have benefited from. And so you have to keep that in mind here, right? That you are a byproduct of that experience with your caregivers. They did the best with what they knew. Absolutely, absolutely, D. They did the best with what they knew. So um, you have you have this dynamic, right? And so when you think back about your own experience, there are ways in which you have been shaped and formed, and your experience with your caregivers is going to shape the work that you're called to as it relates to um, our four P's: population, um, place, process, and problem. All right, so I'll just talk about the first P, which was problem, is that we have a unique problem that we have been given to solve as a result of our experience with their caregivers. That there is a unique burden that we have on our heart as a result of our experience. And this burden creates a problem for us because we're the ones who uniquely have been designed to to solve that problem because of our experience. Because there are some other people who don't share your same burden, so they're not going to be motivated to create a solution because they don't have the same burden. You guys follow me there? That we create solutions as a result sometimes of our own burdens, and we create solutions because we don't want other people to experience what we've experienced. But we wouldn't have that burden, have that problem to solve if we didn't have the experiences that we had with the family of origin that we were in. Man, that's good news. All right. So, problem. Second is population. So, there is a population, there is a people group that you're uniquely called to serve as a result of your experience. Now, sometimes this takes people some time to figure out, but I think eventually they do figure out. But there's a specific population of people that you're called to serve as a result of your experience. And I don't even have to really go into detail, I think, with this one, because I think for most of us, we know that as a result of our experiences growing up, we have a special burden for a demographic of people who share our experience, share some similar commonalities, and we feel called to serve. So, for instance, my practice is filled with about 75% of my practice is with African American men. Yep. 75% of my practice is with African American men who look like me and share my experience. And guess what? they share my experience just not because they're a black man, but because they also grew up in families and homes where, and this is by and large generally for men, that there is no formal education that is teaching men how to identify, label, express, process, and regulate their emotion. There's just not a formal education out there for that. I'm going to create it, so don't you get any ideas, but there's no formal education that's out there. So the burden that I had in trying to cultivate that, even in myself as a young man, I am now serving almost 75, 80% of my private practice as a clinician is with brothers who have that experience. And now even more specifically, men who are navigating this experience, who are married, who have families, I'm helping them navigate that, right? And that's as a result of, one, my experience with my family of origin, but also in my own evolution, I'm finding how much of a need it is for what I have to offer. But it all started because of my experience with my family of origin. So a part of the people group that I'm called to serve are African American men, brothers who ideally are married, have families, who are trying to manage raising a family, but also either building or starting a business. So I've done my work to kind of hone into specific populations of people that I feel called to serve, but that's one of the populations that I'm called to serve. And get this, I am making a living off of adding value and service to people because of this experience in my own family of origin. So I'm able to take care of my family as a result of what happened in my family of origin that created a burden for me to find a solution, the problem, which then led me to the people that I'm called to serve. And then next in this lineup is the process. So in my work as a clinician, I develop a process of how to serve these people. And I want you to stop here and think about this, that oftentimes our process of how we serve people is going to be linked to our own challenges in our evolution of becoming who we're called to be. So part of the process, which is a specific way in which we serve the people we're called to serve, is rooted in our own trauma, is rooted in our own wounds, is rooted in the things that held us back. And we create a process to help people navigate that. And to get free from some of those things that may have held them bound. And get this, I want to say this, that we don't have to be an expert to help people. We just got to be further along in our journey of where people are at to be able to say, hey, this is what worked for me. This is my process. And people appreciate that, people's authenticity. What I've learned is that people appreciate people's authenticity and transparency, and because we can feel when people are being authentic and genuine with us. And when people are share their process with us, it allows them rather to get results in their life as a result of our own experience. So when we develop a process right for people, it's going to do two things for them. One, is going to help them avoid potentially a barrier or setback or challenge that we had to navigate through. So as a result of you going through this experience, you're going to help them possibly navigate around that specific barrier that you may have hit in your process, in your own growth, in your own development. Or it is going to help people feel like they're not alone because, to be very honest, we have a tendency to sometimes think, although we know that it's not true, we sometimes tend to think that what we're going through is unique to us, that we are the only person that's experiencing what we're experiencing. When in reality, there are other people who have navigated what we've navigated through. And in that person sharing their story, sharing their process, what it does is it helps to lift the sense of shame that we feel as a result of what we've had to navigate through. Which is why I think people who speak up about their traumas, about their story, about their places of shame, really are the people that are going to really have profound impact in their sphere of influence because they're leading with vulnerability. And um, as a part, my little part right here, parenthetically, to say, that, shame needs three things to survive. Shame needs isolation, secrecy, and fear of judgment. The three ingredients that shame needs in order to survive are isolation, secrecy, and fear of judgment. When those three ingredients are present, our shame, which is a defined shame, is that intense feeling of not being enough, or this feeling of I don't have what it takes. Therefore, I'm not worthy of love, belonging, and connection. So when we have this, those three ingredients present, isolation, secrecy, and shame, it's hard for us to show up in our authentic selves. But the thing that allows shame to dissipate in part is when we share our story. This is why I say for so many people that I hold space for is that the places of shame in your life, in your narrative, will often be the birthplaces for the things that you do in your work with other people. The places that cause us shame are oftentimes the birthplaces for where we find our greatest service to people, and where people will even pay us because we are adding value and sharing our story as a result of it. Man, this is really getting good, you guys. You guys should pay me even for that, right? um, but it's linked to our story, because I think one of the unique realities about shame is that it definitely would love for you to give the credit to something else as the problem, so that it continues to operate beneath the surface. So shame is the thing that keeps us from sharing our story. It is the thing that keeps us from adding value to people, because of the shame. All right, so I'm not belabor that any longer. The third thing, so we've talked about the problem, talked about uh, population, talked about process, and uh, the place. The place is the last one. So the place has to do with the unique setting in which we serve the people that we've been called to serve. Uh, Place has to do with the unique setting in which we have been called to serve the people we've been called to serve. So, for instance, because I had this desire to hold space for people in their stories, I was a passionate lover of stories. I love to listen and to empathize with people and to hear their narratives. Because of my own narrative, I had to figure out what's going to be the best place that I could serve these type of people in. And long story short, I discovered that counseling was the best place that allowed me to hold space for people, that gave me the most direct access to being able to change someone's life for the gifts, skills, and talents that I had that were unique to me. And so our family of origin will often set us up for this unique setting. Now, for some of us, like I said, that may be in process. We're trying to figure out what's the unique setting in which I am, my family of origin is going to allow me to serve in. Uh, so backing up here, like our family of origin shapes our sense of purpose because it creates a burden or a problem in which for us to solve. That problem leads us to leads us to a specific population of people who we feel called to serve as a result of our experiences in our own family of origin. That unique population of people that we serve, as a result of that, we develop a process to serve them, to be able to actually provide solutions to the problem that we want to solve. So that's the process. And then that ultimately leads us to the place, figuring out what is the best setting that I can serve these people in. And so for me, the best setting that I could serve these people in was in the what really was in three avenues. One was counseling, one was counseling and coaching rather. Um, and I did it in the setting of a therapy session. I did it in the setting of courses. I did it in the setting, I'm doing it in the setting of retreats and in the setting of master classes. So these four unique settings give me the ability to harness my experience and my family of origin, all that comes to bear in these unique settings where I serve these people, serve this population that I'm called to serve, answering or giving them the answer to this problem or solution rather to the problem that all was started as a result of my experience and my own family of origin. So our family of origin is unique in shaping our sense not only of our identity, but it also is shaping the work that we're called to do. That so much of even people's work today is wired. People don't even realize how much of, they don't realize how upset they are at work and the work they're called to do is because of needs that did not get met as a result of their family of origin. So they're searching for these things on a specific job in a workplace, and they don't understand that, man, this might not be the place that I need to be working at, because sometimes we're trying to work out and resolve our childhood trauma in the workplace, and it doesn't work that way. If we don't resolve our trauma before serving in certain spaces, it's going to handicap our ability to really be effective. But we know that this is a result why people choose occupations. It's because of our own childhood trauma, our own wounds. And if those wounds, traumas are not dealt with, they end up handicapping us instead of being the things that propel us into what we're called to do. All right, man. So I have said a lot. I want to take just a moment to see if anybody has any questions for me, any comments, either on Facebook or YouTube. And if not, I'm going to be out of here in a few short moments. Oh, perfect. Ray, Sheree, good to see you, sister. D, perfect. What's your question? You got a question for me? Put it in the chat for me. I can make sure I answer it. Doom, doom, doom. Boom, boom. And I have a little bit delay on my end, so I'll give it some time to come through. Okay, all right, you don't have any questions. Perfect. I'm glad this was good. I'm glad this is beneficial to you guys. Yeah, man, we don't realize really how our family of origin really has impacted and shaped our identity, but it also shapes the work that we're called to do. So I'm really thankful for this. Next week I'm going to be talking about how our family of origin impacts and shapes our relationships and how we engage in relationships, whether that's with platonic or romantic. It's going to be really good. And then the week following that, in our fourth installment, I'm going to actually be having a conversation with a guest where I'm going to be talking about how do we engage conversations with parents around the ways in which we have been raised, and sometimes we're going to talk about if it's necessary to share those experiences. Is it beneficial? Sometimes it's not beneficial. It can be counterproductive, but we're going to answer some questions as relates to conversations with parents, if and when we should have them, what we should do in preparation for them, and it's going to really be good. All right, man, so I just have one favor to ask you guys, and that is if this has added value in any way to you on tonight, just want you to share it to your own channels, to your own networks, and subscribe. You can visit us. I'm at James Perkins TV on YouTube and just subscribe. That way you can get notified when we go live every week. And then also on Facebook, if you just like our page, click that notifications. You'll be able to get notified when we go live. All right, friends, until next week, you guys be well. If you need to reach me, you can do so at jamesperkins.help. Again, that's jamesperkins.help. And until next time, peace.